So really my prayer is that we will release all of these ideas of what it should look like. And we really embrace spirituality as an authentic way of life that is rooted in the truth of who we are and in a connection to a greater source. So that being said, prayer. Yeah, prayer. I love to pray. I really love to pray. Prayer is an experience, and prayer is one of the things that we do it's one of the ways we make the right use of the gifts and the power we have been given as human beings.
Welcome to the 1000 Day Sober podcast. My name is Lee Davey. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone that doesn't drink alcohol, and I spend every waking moment of my life helping other people do the same, like right now. So what's going on, people? If you haven't already done so, then get your ass over to Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram following 1000 Days Sober. Actually, stick YouTube into that as well. Lots and lots of different types of content that will be really, really useful for you in your journey to be someone that doesn't drink alcohol. And we all want free content, right? Who wants to put their hand in their pocket? So there you have it. That's where it will all be. 1000 Day Sober, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I also want to tell you that we have opened a brand spanking new private Facebook group, 1000 Days Sober. We've got a little Facebook group just started up, and we're welcoming in people who have all kinds of addictions, not just alcohol, right? Come on, join us, get some of the value that we're giving out there, and build a community, start asking questions, asking for support, and more importantly, helping other people. If you want a piece of that, get hold of our community manager, Richie. An email address is 1kdayssober@gmail.com. 1kdayssober@gmail.com. That's the number one, okay? And ask her to send you a link, and she will get you into that little group, okay? I also want to welcome Heidi Raval to the 1000 Days Sober coaching team. Heidi is a sexual empowerment coach, and the reason that I asked Heidi to join is because loss of libido seems to be a common theme with people that I'm working with at the moment. So I say, come on, Heidi, come on board, and you can work with the strivers that we have currently within our programs, and you can sort out their sexual issues that they have, right? Because we all have these problems, but we don't generally want to talk about it. So Heidi becomes our 15th coach, and we have plans to add even more. And if you want to work with Heidi or our complete broad range menu of 1000 Days Sober coaches in different areas such as meditation, mindfulness, money mindset, health and wellness, grief, trauma, or just working with little old me, okay? Then get over to www.1000dayssober.com, select a choose yourself call. You will likely speak to me right now, and we'll have a chat about whether the Strive method for addictions or the Strive method for relationships, both 6 month coaching containers, are a good fit for you. We will decide if we want to choose you, and you'll decide if you want to choose us. Okay? Now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to this week's guest, and Kalliste Arienne. Kalliste is a global mentor for life enhancement and empowerment. She is an educator of effective communication strategies and a spiritual life coach. And in this episode, we talk about Kalliste's own personal addiction story. We talk about her work in nonviolent communication and how important that is in addiction. And we also talk about her interest in prayer and her recently created prayer hotline and a whole lot more. So without further ado, I'm going to shut the hell up and leave you in the capable hands of Kalliste Arienne. There isn't a video for this podcast, so those of you that tune into YouTube, I'm sorry, you're not going to see Kalliste's beautiful face, but you can listen to the audio over at YouTube and through your normal podcast channels. So take care of yourself, and I hope to see you on a Choose Yourself call. Get over to www.1000dayssober.com, get on a call with me, and we'll see how we can help you, all right? Take care, folks. Bye. Kalliste, how's life? In the shadows there?
In the shadows. Well, I'll bring the light then while I'm in the shadows. But I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's really good to connect. I haven't spoken to you or seen your face for a long time. We've traded messages, but other than that, what's going on in your life right now?
But here we are.
Yeah, what's going on in your life?
Well, I am just coming off the heels of a pretty, powerful summer, and obviously the program that we were in together. And so really excited to take off in this new season and really implement and integrate everything that we've gathered, or that I have gathered as well over the summertime. And step into a new season of my own professional life, personal life, etc.
I like it. So put all that together then for the people listening. What is it that you do? How do you leave your imprint on the world?
Ooh, how do I leave my imprint on the world? Well, I am a global mentor for life enhancement and empowerment. So I help men and women to reclaim their personal power, step into their true identity behind the masks, and really experience their greatest self. And I use, different modalities to do that, but that in essence is who I am and what I'm here to do.
What are some of the problems that you're finding out there throughout your work? I know everybody's very individual, but are there any patterns out there that you come across that you need to help crack?
That's a big question. I mean, the interesting thing is that, part of my work and what I do in spiritual life coaching, one of the patterns I often see is, a major disconnect with source, and the inability to connect to a higher and greater power. There's obviously the great wound of humanity is the separation from God. And so, that is prevalent in all of the work I do. And just, a real sense of victimization obviously comes about through, whether it be through romantic relationships and or any area of a life, being in victim consciousness is just something that is so prevalent. And obviously the world has brought up a lot of fears for people as well. So I'm seeing that a lot as well. And the need to reclaim that connection and that power.
I feel a lot of myself in what you just said there. Maybe I'm your ideal client. Let's start being cut off from source. For me, when I went to a Christian school, but faith or religion was never really pushed in the household. Like nobody ever talked about God or said prayers. We had our dinner in front of the TV, that type of stuff. But when we was in school, I could recite the Lord's Prayer now, believe it or not. Like we said the Lord's Prayer, we had prayers, we did religious education. And I must have believed in God as it is in terms of the Bible back then, because I remember praying to him for Manchester United to win the league. So I remember. But then my mum lost she ended up having a stillbirth, and I remember her telling me, and in that moment I just decided that I wasn't going to believe in God. And I must have been about, I don't know, how old was I? Around 10 maybe. And then my belief in religion or spirituality or anything else just changed from that moment. Like a 10-year-old kid made that decision and not a single mentor stepped in or helped me with that. So by the time I get to now, 45, where I'm just about kind of like poking that hole again, I'm still a 10-year-old boy thinking about it sometimes. So do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that, we have all been left to discover God for ourselves. And it's an experience that we all need to have. I think no matter if you had a mentor and you had someone to teach you or educate you, yes, that may have opened up some channels. But at the end of the day, it's an experience that we intimately have. And that usually comes about from some experience in our lives, often one that is very painful or traumatic and so forth. And what I've noticed also in the generations that I work with, I noticed that it's very common for people over 50 years of age to have spiritual wounding with religion, and what I've noticed is that a lot of that age group and generation turn to nature for church and to be connected to God. And then you have the newer generations who are more into the spiritual new age movement. And of course, our grandparents are still very connected to the rituals and religions, right? So we have these different ways of understanding God through different generations. And I think it is very common for people of over 50 to experience some sort of disheartening disconnection or disappointing experience with God. Absolutely.
There's also an aspect of it for me when I think about, like, I think it was this morning or yesterday, I did a video either to my group or on social media. I can't remember which because I do so many of them. And I mentioned God. Like I mentioned God, and I was talking about God as a him, a her, or an it. Like I obviously wasn't refined in my conversations, but I believed in what I was talking about at the time. Like I was basically saying, like, we were created to handle the full breadth and broad spectrum of emotions that we undertake as a human being. So I was appointing and assigning God as our creator, who made sure that we had the ability to do that, right? But there's a part of me when I talk like that I slip into my victim status a little bit. And I get worried what people will think about me, particularly not so much new people, but people who have known me. And so I start to project and say a story that, are these people are going to feel like I'm superior to them? Or these people are going to think that I'm an idiot? Are these people are going to think, what's the matter with this guy? And I start to build those stories in my head, which I got to be honest, if I'm not careful, and I am, and present and aware, they can actually hold me back from what I feel is my next stage in my evolution, which is spiritual growth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So where does that come from?
I would say that comes from the playground and being moved from England to Wales when I'm 10, in around that time period when my mum lost her daughter, and just being different to everybody and desperately wanting to fit in. And then from that moment, I received my self-worth from external sources, and that existed until very recently. And I would say I still do that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a really wonderful teacher, psychologist. His name is Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've heard of him. He does a lot of trauma. He works with trauma, and he talks about a lot how we sacrifice authenticity for belonging, and how that is all rooted in trauma. So that's the first thing that came up for me when you were speaking, right? Is I'm trading even if I'm not accurate, even if my the words I'm using don't properly reflect my understanding of what God is or anything like that, I still am in fear that how I am understanding it or expressing it will be rejected. So I sacrifice inauthenticity instead of just owning it and be like, hey, this is where I'm at, how I describe God in this moment. This is where I'm at, right? And I'm subject to change and evolve in that understanding as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel forced to me right now. It feels natural. Whilst it feels natural. It's almost like the path that I'm going down feels safe, secure, and I should be here. Mm-hmm. But occasionally I'm getting pricked by the odd rose bush. Like it's kind of like that, every now and then there's an old part of me trying to chug me down to a different road. But I tell you where it comes from, Kalliste, is, someone told me recently, just do what works. And don't stop doing what works. So if I'm praying, if I am believing that there is something out there giving me signs, and that I follow some and I miss some others, and great things happen to me in life, why not continue doing that? That's my school of thought at the moment. Mm-hmm. So it's not a very spiritual school of thought. In a way, you could say that it's kind of like selfish, because it's kind of like, this is working for me, so I'm going to keep doing it. So it's kind of me. But then I balance that with, well, I really want to make a big impact in the world, so this is helping me do that, I think. I think.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, we all, who's to say there's one way? And where does that belief come from, that there's one way to to achieve something, and what works for you doesn't work for me. What works for him doesn't work for you. So why are we to believe that there is one way?
I think that comes from my addictions. So I believe that my addictions have helped cultivate a very binary, black and white, polarized way of thinking. And that is what is showing up here. And then I have to be really careful that doesn't come out in my coachings and my teaching. So it can manifest in a little bit of dogma, like, this is my way, it works for me, so it will work for the rest of the world. And when it doesn't, I'm like, holy shit, there must be something wrong with this person. When now I'm getting to understand more that no. This isn't the way it works, Lee. You're not nobody's God. You're not nobody's savior. You're just there to really help and guide people and ask the right questions and just be there to give them a cuddle and a hug when they need it. So my mind is changing on that slowly.
I'm so delighted to hear it, because that is what we call dirty coaching. Dirty coaching keeps you at the forefront of the experience, your vision, your intention. And sometimes we don't always know that we're doing that. We may have a solid intention in our minds, but the subconscious, the undercurrents, and the other beliefs and the things that are within us, the other consciousnesses that we're holding, can cause us to be out of alignment with integrity in our coaching. So that's a really huge awareness for you to have. Very powerful.
Well, I like the way you said that as well, because, tell me if I'm going down the wrong road here, but what came up for me while you were saying that term, dirty coaching, is you can take it out of the coaching realm and apply it into life. So let's say, for example, you have a son who wants his mom to be better, but he wants his mom to be better because it makes him feel better, and it's a hassle with her being this way. So he's trying to change her with the wrong kind of energy, and it comes across from his mom like it's control. That sounds like dirty coaching, but it's life. It's not coaching. Am I on the side wavelength?
Well, to me, where you're headed with that is codependency, right? We become codependent and needing validation, and to get our identity and our worth and our sense of love from outside of ourselves. And of course, our parents are the first ones that we begin to create those types of relationships with. So maybe, there's some parallel there, but definitely a little bit different from the way I'm hearing it anyway.
Okay. Yeah. To expand on that a little bit more, then I just think one of my blocks with I have a block with codependency, by the way. And I think one of the blocks is because I've tried to read about it a lot and try to understand it a lot. And I think I read this quote once, like 98% of the human population are codependent. Mm-hmm. So then I thought to myself, well, what is the point learning this if the entire human race has it? So to me, my brain was like, well, I can learn more about it if like only a few of us have that problem. But if we all have that problem, I find it really difficult to apply it. So, where do you see in codependency? I mean, you could talk about your addiction story as well in this, actually, and where maybe codependency showed up in that area. It would be a really useful example for people listening in on it.
Sure. Codependent. I am a recovering codependent. Absolutely. And it goes back to the initial where we started from, which was separation from God. When we are codependent, we are always needing to work for love, because we are unaware, cannot acknowledge or accept that we, in our divine nature, are love, and that love is the supreme law of this universe, where we all come from, what we all operate under. And it's a lifelong journey of discovering self as love. We can intellectualize it and get it on a level, but to really embody it is a journey we take until our last breath. And I'm a big believer in that we can do a large degree of healing to rid ourselves of codependent patterns, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't come up or rear its head later again in life at different points in life. So to me, codependency is constantly working for love. And when we do that, we exist with a gaping hole in our hearts. And we are walking around constantly with a beggar's cup, looking to be filled, looking to take from other people, from the world. And it's so interesting that we are constantly looking for something that's so near. That's really within us, but that's the journey, and that is the game that we all play in this life, right? So addiction is a really interesting topic. So I'm really excited that you invited me to share my story and just my journey with that. Let me take a breath here. Addiction for me, I'll start with what I was taught and modeled from a really young age was that alcohol, substances was the way to cope. It was the coping mechanism for anxiety, for stress in my nuclear family. In the society I grew up in, and here in the United States, it's also very ubiquitous in the culture, obviously, as well, to turn to alcohol, not just for escapism, but also for celebration, right? It's a social custom. It's part of our culture. But when you're carrying out around such a large degree of pain and trauma, and you have such a gaping hole in your heart, such as I did, that's a very dangerous culture or lifestyle or environment to be growing up in. And that's exactly what I experienced, was that in my, brokenness and in my unconsciousness, I turned to alcohol as a way to disconnect from my reality. And that led to a lot of very dangerous choices, including legal troubles, getting in trouble with underage drinking, driving under the influence at 17 years old. And really, the world is just not as kind as sometimes our family is when it comes to learning some of those harder lessons with life. So it was a very hard learning lesson for me. But I wouldn't say I was addicted to alcohol. It just was what was present. My experience with addiction really came probably around 26 when I experienced a pretty severe accident. I was severely burned. And so addiction resulted from the injury and the accident. And it was a way for me not only to deal with the pain of the injury in the moment, but it also became an emotional crutch that I used for post-traumatic stress disorder, and became so deeply rooted in my way of coping that, it's taken very deep, spiritually grounded work to be able to grow in my consciousness and have a healthier lifestyle and a healthier way of coping with life.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I know it's not something that you've talked about a lot, so I really appreciate you for trusting me and my audience with that.
Yeah, thank you.
When you go into that period of introspection, kind of wondering what the heck is going on here, and how have I got out of control, and what am I going to do about it? How do you leap from there to where you are today? Like what are the tangible? Because what are the tangible steps or the people you met? Like, what were the milestones that people can learn from that you really used to stitch this together?
Well, I'm a deep advocate for therapy and counseling and mentors. I think for me, my life became unmanageable, but because I was able to secure so many opportunities and I could see I was very gifted and talented, life has a way of coming to shake and wake us up when we're so deep asleep, right? And that's exactly what happened for me. The accident in which I was severely burned with 3rd-degree burns, I was an outpatient at an emergency burn center for over 1 year, treating the burns and the scars. And at that time, I did not have solid relationships intact. They weren't active because I was working. I had become such an isolator outside of my work. Addiction wasn't something I did socially. It's something that I isolated and did as a way to cope. So it really took that experience and not having loved ones around in my life during that process, for something greater than myself to sort of seize me and salvage me from the wreckage. And so is that a formula someone can follow? I don't know. It's the way that my experience opened up to healing. But from there, the decisions I made from that point, it's not that the choice to turn to substances was eradicated in that moment. It took several years for that whole thing to break down, and many trials and errors. And one of the most pivotal moments was bringing on a mentor, bringing on a therapist who became the conscious parent I never had and allowed me to see the blueprint of my life and the script I was playing out. And that really began the process of my own healing and individuation and ability to take on new life skills, new tools, new knowledge, right? So if I could offer anything, I think taking on therapists and counselors and mentors is one of the greatest, and of course, ones that are in integrity and that align with you it's one of the greatest investments you can make in your life. Absolutely. And the therapist that changed my life, Dr. Patricia Allen, is an addiction specialist. So, her work was very, very helpful and relevant to where I was at.
What would you say is the difference between a therapist and a coach? Because both can be specialized, I guess, but therapist seems to be, to me, it feels like it's one thing and a coach is another. And I guess people listening to it, when they're trying to figure out what to do, they don't have like limitless amounts of money. So it's kind of like, where can I put my attention? What would you say the differences are between the two?
Great question. I think it's a very common question that people have in wanting to make the distinction. What is the difference? Therapy deals with the past, and therapy deals with particular things such as grief, right? Grief is a very particular thing that is more therapy oriented. The coaching works with the present and the future. Right. Coaching accelerates you and moves you towards a vision and a goal. And therapy could be something you stay in for years to untangle the past. And so that would be probably the main distinction in therapy and coaching.
And where was you while you were going through this whole experience of recovery from a physical and a mental standpoint? Where was you spiritually? Like, have you always been, at one with God, or did the accident shake you a little bit? What happened there?
Thank you for asking. That is a really powerful question. I grew up without, any sort of, I didn't practice a religion. My grandparents were Catholic, so when I was with them, who largely raised me, I would attend church with them. My mother, who I spent some time with as well, was agnostic. I had peers that went to Christian Science churches and schools, so I would attend those. So I was very open, but never connected. Never connected. It was just something that, took, like I said, the accident that I had was really the catalyst for my spiritual awakening, because that was a direct experience with God that I had in that hospital bed by myself. I could feel myself being pulled from that experience in a way that I had never had. And what's very, very interesting is that from that moment forward, I began going to church. I sat in the back row of a church every Sunday by myself for 2 years. 2 years. That evolved. I ended up leaving there and getting into a gospel church out in Texas that I attended all the time. I started studying everything under the sun, reading books. I think Eckhart Tolle was one of those first books many, many years ago that opened a lot of us up. But I just started to feel very drawn and pulled into truth. And it was nothing that I sought out to do. I'll be really honest with you. I feel that I was pulled into this whole decade, this last decade of my life. That accident was in 2011. So this last decade has been a major journey for me in my spiritual awakening, of which I did not seek. I did at the soul level. but not at the conscious human level. I didn't seek it out. So, so very, very powerful. And my understanding of God has deepened and expanded and evolved to the point now where I read many different inspirational texts and sacred texts. I'm not committed to any particular religion, although I very much enjoy church or enjoy being a part of, community that gathers around a love of God, praise of God, learning and knowledge of God. And so 10 years later, I can say now that God is at the forefront of my life. And that's incredible for me.
Thanks for that. Mm-hmm. We're in Los Angeles at the moment, and before COVID, I would regularly go to Michael Beckwith's church, or whatever you want to call it, in Agape. Mm-hmm. And for me, why would I go there if I'm sitting on the fence, the spiritual fence? I go there because there is an energy there that is very welcoming and very communal, almost at an anthropological level. Like I feel like I feel like I belong here as a human being. It's almost like, I don't know, like you're a chimpanzee in your right clan of chimpanzees. I don't know. It just feels like normal, right? And then there's the music, and then there's the dance, and the willingness for everybody to get up and just dance. Nobody's drinking, nobody's on drugs, but they're just dancing, and the music moves me. I cry so many times when I'm there. And then there's Michael himself. So like a figurehead, like a father, a mentor. And he moves me with his words and his speech, right? Now, the only thing that spoils my experience of that is myself when I start to create a story dependent on the language used by the people around me. And that, when I reflect on it, is something, like you say, goes all the way back to childhood and some work to be on. But it does raise the question to myself, is how many people really close themselves off to a real kind of like superpower in your life, just because of some old story that probably we created when we was 10. I don't know if you want to say anything on that.
So there's a really fabulous book by Ernest Holmes called Science of the Mind. I highly recommend that book as well. And what in the book, he talks about how each person has been left unto themselves to discover God. We've all been left unto our own devices, our own mind, our own experiences to discover what God is for ourselves. And I think that's a really powerful thing to keep in mind, because even through your misinterpretations and judgments, all of that is still, if you're seeking truth, that is part of the quest and part of the journey, I think, is to come up and see everything that is standing in your way, all of the judgments and the thoughts and the beliefs that you have. And it also is also important to know, what is God? Like, what is God for you? How do you define it, understand it? Because we each have a different understanding of what God is to ourselves. And so I don't judge your judgments. They seem pretty par for the course of seeking truth, as I understand it.
When you said, what is God? Mm-hmm. That made me realize that a big part of this internal conflict that is going on, that is manifesting itself external. And hey, the reason why this is really important is, I'm one of a group of leaders in 1000 Days Sober who's trying to make tremendous change. So, for me, it's important for me to be messy, but it's also important for me to be aware of kind of like when I'm trying to make sense of things, so I can be more coherent, in terms of how I'm talking to people about these things. And one of the things that came up there was, what is God? To me, is a question that I shy away from, or I get protective and judgmental of myself. So, for example, if I pray at the dinner table, I will say, and I do every time we have a meal, is a thank you universe as opposed to thank you God. And that's because of approval. It's linked to approval. So it's almost like, if I'm going to talk about God or use God, I need to justify to you who is listening why I'm using that word. So you don't believe I believe in a biblical God, which is approval, which is, I don't love myself, I need your love, which is exactly what you were saying is what this journey is all about, is just recognizing and knowing that everything is love and we're all connected to love and we are love. I'm thinking like the Beatles now, but this is the way I process Kalliste. So it's a bit messy and a bit gooey, but I'm hoping that there are other Lee Davies out there listening, thinking, oh yeah, this kind of helps me a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I have never personally had an issue with using the word God. That's just been my experience because, like I said, again, God is an experience I had, not something I studied, not something I was told to believe in. In fact, I really didn't have anyone pushing an idea of God on me in my particular life. So I don't have a spiritual wounding around the word God or what God is. That doesn't mean to say I haven't had spiritual wounds, but I think that for me, in my experience of being in that hospital bed and having the experience I had, nothing could ever, I can't unsee, unfeel, unexperience what I did. So therefore, for me, I feel very grounded in my ability to own the word God, universe, spirit, source. I mean, it is all what, and it comes back to what you said. If universe works for you, did you say universe but wanted to say God? Because that's different than just using the word universe.
For me, I exist right now in my wife's family, and they're all very Christian. So the word God is used a lot. So I associate it here with Christianity and the Bible. When I go to Agape and he uses the word God, I experience it as Mother Earth and universe and energy. And then when I talk to myself about it, yeah, I just go straight back to that playground, and we're gonna beat people up who use the word God, or people who use the word God or go to church are inferior. They're not cool enough. Like, so there's that aspect of it as well. But something's happened to me since I joined Kaboom. You know, I'm now in the leap, so we're talking 14 weeks. So it's a very small time. And I tell you what it is, Kalliste, it's being in a container. You know, when people say you are the sum total of the 5 people you spend your time with. And I'm always saying to people in 1000 Days Sober, you know, they're like, I can't stop drinking, right? I'm like, okay, when did you last drink? Friday night. Where was you? In the pub. Okay, why are we in the pub? It's not the pub, and it's not the people in the pub. It's me. It's in my head, because I also drink when I'm alone. And it's this deflection that, no. If you surround yourself with drinkers, the likelihood is you're going to be a drinker. If you keep going to this place, which is designed, it's a structure which is designed for you to drink, and you don't want to, the likelihood is you are going to drink, right? So I really do promote and push, and we talk about this a lot, about who you hang around with is like really important. And I've really found that in my recent coaching containers, as I look around and see the joy and happiness and the willingness to experience pain and suffering as a collective. Like, I found that so powerful, and I've seen people like grow in so many different areas. I can't be honest, it's a piece of me like, I want a piece of that. Like, why am I the most unspiritual person to come into Kaboom? Maybe the universe, God, is sent me here for me to, you know, to give me a sign and hang on, this works, which takes me to prayer, right? Takes me to prayer. I've read Larry Dossey's book, healing. Can't remember the full title, but it's about prayer, and it's about the science of prayer. And I think I read it because the science of prayer allowed me to make sense of it more than believing in the spiritual aspect of prayer, right? So he quotes lots of different studies about praying over two sets of plants in different countries, like with intentional prayer on one set of plants, and then the other one wilting and dying, and this one growing, and these type of things, you know. But I find when I get myself into a process of prayer, which I am at the moment, which is each night before I go to bed, I'm clasping my hands together like I did when I was a young child, and I'm talking to God knows who, but it's filling me with a sense of security, and my life is just really great right now. So I'm going to keep doing it. Now, I know you recently posted something about prayer and a prayer hotline. So I'd really love to hear your thoughts about how it plays a role in your life, how you feel that it manifests itself, in which ways it does, and your idea on the prayer hotline.
Absolutely. Well, before I answer that, my prayer truly is that we will release what we think spirituality needs to look like. You know, there's just so many ideas and beliefs around what spirituality should look like, that, to me, what does it mean to be spiritually? So I'm the least spiritual person to be in this room. If you have overcome an addiction, you have done some of the deepest spiritual work than anyone else on this planet. I believe addiction is deeply spiritual work. To be in your authenticity, to be in your ownership, to be who you are, that is being rooted in the spirit. So really my prayer is that we will release these all of these ideas of what it should look like, and we really embrace spirituality as an authentic way of life that is rooted in the truth of who we are and in a connection to a greater source. So that being said, prayer. Prayer. I love to pray. I really love to pray. Prayer is an experience. And prayer is one of the things that we do it's one of the ways we make the right use of the gifts and the power we have been given as human beings. To use the power of our mind, to use the power of our word, which leads to conscious choice in our behavior, is what prayer does. And I believe that, all things begin in the mind. And so when we are praying, we are tapping into the power of our mind. And we are able to, when we're able to establish a mental connection and an emotional connection with a higher mind, divine mind, with our mind, what we are essentially doing is we are elevating our consciousness, our frequency, and our vibration. I come from the belief that we're vibrational in being, that we are emitting frequencies through our thoughts and through our emotions at every moment. And so when we are in a process of prayer, the science of prayer, right, which is not just an act, but it's a process. There's a posture to it. There's a way to pray. And so when we are doing that, what we do is we elevate the mind, and we are able to impress upon our mind new thoughts and new ideas that anchor a new reality and new experiences into our lives. And the greatest misconception, and something I see with clients I've worked with and people in general, is that we're praying for things. It's always about praying for things, wanting things, and there's nothing wrong with desires and at all. But from the spiritual perspective, prayer is not about what we're aiming to get. It's about how to pray. Because when we are praying, what we are truly doing is, instead of making things happen, we are neutralizing, balancing, and harmonizing our own frequency to align with whatever is a vibrational match. That's it. You're only aligning with what already exists. You're not making anything happen. So prayer, as a begging and convincing and manipulating something out there to give me what I need, is a total misconception of what prayer actually is. And so that being said, prayer, the prayer hotline, I'm obedient to ideas and inspiration that I get. And this was something that I was inspired to share. And it's really threefold in nature. My intention is threefold in that I want to offer a space for people in the world now to come with any needs, struggles, and fears that they may have, because we are all going through a lot at this time in the world. So to have a safe space for someone to come to. Secondly, I want to be a demonstrator of the power of spoken word. If you are not utilizing your mind and your words, and you're not tapping into that power and establishing some connection with God greater than yourself, you are doing yourself an incredible disservice. And it's no longer about just spiritual people, philosophical, religious people praying. This is a life skill that we need as we move into this new shift in this new world that we're all headed in. So the third part of my intention was to actually be on a line where I can hold a space, be an advocate for using your mind and your word to create change in your life. And 3, be a demonstrator of what real empowered prayer looks like. How does it sound? How do we actually pray? And so that was my intention with creating that space and that prayer hotline.
I got to get on there. I got to get on there. I think this is where guides and mentors become so important, and going into situations with open minds. So for example, I'm in a coaching container called The Leap right now. And in my small group, my accountability buddy, Claudia, I've been paired with her, I think, because we're very different people, whilst at the same we have a deep connection, but we're very different in the way we approach certain things. And she took me through a visualization process, for example, which was 100x the intensity of whatever I felt my visualization process was, which is so important, because part of our Strive method for addictions and relationships module is this power of visualization, is this power of understanding in the future how I'm going to feel, embodying how I'm going to feel when I'm sober, et cetera, and in this new kind of body, in this new kind of mind. And then I think that, we kind of got that lick, and then someone comes along and blows your mind. It's no, okay, your intention's right, but let's just do a few tweaks here to 10x or 100x the impact. And it sounds like my prayer ritual could really do with an MLT, as we say in the UK, a car service. So I'll definitely be checking that out. I did give an example, please. Last night I went to bed and I just closed my eyes and I was like, oh no, I forgot to pray. So then in the darkness, I just put my hands together and I just went through the motions, just tick it off a checklist. And then I realized, now listening to you, that that's not what it's about at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious, what was the difference in the visualization process that Claudia offered you compared to what you were already doing? If you want to speak to it, I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure. Time, it was longer. There was more kind of somatic work around it, more patience, getting out of your mind and into your body. I don't know, it all came the same kind of stuff, but you know what I mean. It was more intentional, it felt. And it felt like we were there to do that. Whereas sometimes in my life, meditation, mindfulness, prayer, and visualization is something that I need to do quickly to get on to the next thing. So I when I feel challenged and overwhelmed, like I am right now, because we're going to go camping tomorrow as a family, and I don't want to go. because I'm too busy. So my whole spiritualism is off center because I'm in frantic doing mode, scarcity, lack, just bad juju vibes, really. And what I experienced from Claudia is complete opposite. Same when I talk to you, that there's this radiant joviality. There's this happiness and peace and equanimity. There's this feels like there's more control. There's more handling of shit, and there's we'll talk about nonviolent communication in a minute. And you talked about words, when the power of words and language. It's almost like you're choosing your words, and everything is very meticulously, but naturally, there's nothing wasted. Whereas I think my energy when I'm running around, not wanting to go camping and wanting to get everything done, is I am actually wasting more energy than I think I'm trying to save. So I looked at Claudius and I was like, actually, maybe if I spent more time doing this, then this could be more beneficial for me than what I'm doing. Similarly with prayer, but you've got to test it and you've got to try it, and you're never going to get there without an open, inquisitive mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so. I appreciate your humanity with it though, because it's a relationship, and every relationship requires an investment, and you will reap what you sow into the relationship. If prayer or establishing some sort of connection is a forethought, or it's something you do at the end of the day really quick, well, let's say that was a relationship you had with someone. How is that relationship going to work out? Probably
very good
not
point.
Very well, right? So, and then it also comes back to, do you not just intellectualize, but do you actually get that your mind is the beginning point of all conscious reality creation? That every thought, every feeling, every judgment, every belief, everything is creating your reality. So with prayer, you are utilizing one of the greatest gifts that you have as a human being to create the life that you say that you want. And until that becomes something that you may see me radiant now, or you may look at that, but that's a relationship I've invested in, over time, and that I work to maintain. And if I don't do my spiritual practice, and if I don't pray, I feel it. I'm running around too, trying to get everything done, cut off, not energized, not feeling inspired. And, it is something that requires investment, but it's an investment that I personally want to do, because I know what my life is with it, and I know what my life is without it. And I choose the former.
Yeah, this is all like what you touched upon then was you might see me raging now, but there's sometimes when I'm just kind of running around like a rabbit with his head chopped off, and then you realize, oh, okay, where have I fallen short of my practice? You see that all over my current container. Claudia's the same as well. She'll just freak out, and she'll be like, but then she'll be like, okay, what's happening? What am I doing? And she'll just, right, I haven't been doing this, I haven't been doing that, I haven't been doing right. Come on, let's get back to the drawing board. And I think that's super important, when you connect that with addiction as well, and just use that as an example to, oh, I had a drink today. Like I got overwhelmed and had a drink today. Okay, so where is that going to take you right now? Like, how are you going to think about that? What are you going to do with that experience? Are you going to use that experience to contract? Or are you going to use that experience to expand? Right? Like it's. I think understanding that we are human, and this is why I speak the way I speak.
Yep.
And believe you me, I get a lot of people saying, "What the hell are you talking about that for?" Right? It's because I want to give people the confidence that it's okay to feel and think like they're a little bit weird, they're a little bit freaky, a little bit odd, and they haven't got their shit together, and they don't really know what's going on. Because that's been 45 years of my life. So, and on your language, like me and you will talk on the phone, and I'm like waffling away, and then you just kind of like just ask me one question which will just kind of shake my world, and then I'll just have to think about it, and then but you don't waste those words. And I know you practice like nonviolent communication. I read a book on that a long time ago. So talk a little bit about what you learned through it, and see if you can weave it into the conversation that we've been having around addiction, but also around, the greater expansive things we've been talking about that I still don't know how to label effectively.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, communication and language. I will say that I was so disconnected from. Well, here, let me start with this. NVC, nonviolent communication, is such a phenomenal practice. It's called a language of life. And the reason it's called the language of life is because it actually bridges emotional intelligence with language and communication. So it uses a process called OFNR, observation, feeling, needs, and requests. So the observations are the sensations of the body, being able to identify the feeling, connecting that to what I need, and then being able to use language to make a request. That is incredible. It's an incredible body of work by Marshall Rosenberg. And the reason why it's been so impactful in my life is because I was so disconnected from my body and the life within me. I was either extremely volatile in emotions or totally numb and disconnected. And I was so deficient in skills, strategies, tools that my life just, it was a mess. It was a mess based on that. So what NVC has brought to my life has been the ability to, God, there's nothing more empowering than being able to have the emotional awareness and intelligence and connect that to language and express it. Not being able to express how you feel, what you need, it's a form of death. And many of us are walking around dead from the neck down. We're not connected to our hearts. We're not connected to our bodies. We don't have any tools and skills. And that's the great failure of our, school systems, is that we're not taught this growing up, right? But before I got into NVC, I became certified in effective communication. So I studied cognitive behavioral therapy, transactional analysis, and then androgynous semantic realignment, which realigns language between masculine and feminine energy. So combined NVC and that communication work, there is no thing that I don't feel I can't clean up, express, talk. I may fumble at a moment, but I feel that the tools have given me the ability to tap back into the life within myself and just totally transformed all of my relationships. Words, and Dr. Patricia Allen, who I studied with, who is my mentor and therapist, says words are the quantum particles of our lives. They're the building blocks of everything, and they affect the quantum field in our lives. So they're everything. They're everything. And until you get a hold of your words, you cannot get a hold of your life. And that's exactly what I have found, is that by being able to have language and tools and strategies for any situation, I have been able to tap back into the life within myself. And that's been very, very empowering for me.
It's like you said that thought is what was you saying? Like thought is creation, or the beginning of creation, or and it's like words then enable you to turn that thought into action. And it doesn't have to be physical words. We could be sign language, language, brain, whatever. But it allows us to move forward that progression rather than just being stuck in our head completely, which is going to be a likely indicator towards like numbing or addiction, all the things we spoke about before. So like I always believe, I did an interview with Melanie Joy, and Melanie wrote the book Beyond Beliefs, which was a fantastic book for me on how vegans deal with non-vegans in relationships, because it helped me to understand how drinkers deal with non-drinkers and non-drinkers deal with drinkers in relationships, and how to become allies and all this kind of stuff. And Melanie always says, her other book was Getting Relationships Right, is, at the heart of all our problems in the world is a lack of relational literacy. We don't know how to communicate with each other. And that's because we likely don't know how to communicate with ourselves. So what a toolkit you have in order to help people with that kind of stuff.
So and the most interesting thing is I didn't seek learning to help other people. I sought it to transform my own life first. And it's the transference of wisdom and the years that I have been mentored and gathered this education and put it into use that I have been able to, overcome and become everything that I have overcome. So that is, if there's one thing that I've never doubted in my life, it's what I came here to do. I've been a mentor for 15 years, and yet that has unfolded in so many ways, and it's been so exciting and wonderful to see how it's unfolded in the different places it's brought me and the studies that I've gotten into. And I will say that communication is so practical, and that's what I really love about it. Like, I love being a grounded person in the world with real tools for real relationships, real lives. That's huge for me. It's very important.
Well, it works. Every time I speak to you, Kalliste, you always put me at ease. You manage to challenge me, and I still feel love. I really value our relationship, our friendship, and thank you for coming on and sharing your journey, your story, what you do, giving us some really wonderful insights on prayer and, the greater expansiveness of us and love and everything. I've really appreciated it.
Thank you for having me, Lee. It was an honor to share. And I look forward to the next time that we can get together.
And those of you folks listening, if you want to work with Kalliste or get to know a little bit more about her, go to www.1000dayssober.com. Click on the podcast page, and Kalliste will have her own special little podcast page with all links to all of her work. Kalliste, once again, thank you. I'm going to go and practice how to pray a little bit better.
Awesome. Well, wishing you the best, Lee, and I will see you soon. Thank you so much.
Just another reminder, folks, that if you want to work with Lee, Davey, that's me, and the rest of the 1000 Days Sober coaching team, then get over to www.1000dayssober.com and book yourself a Choose Yourself call with me or a member of the 1000 Days Sober team, so we can see if you're a good fit to take the Strive Method for Addictions course, the Strive Method for Relationships course, or just join the Strive support team. And if you're feeling in a really, really serving mood, please rank and rate our podcast at whatever podcast platform you do, or spread the word around social media and tell people to come and listen to us. Thank you very much. Love you all. Bye.